Our next speaker is Craig Heim, who this summer took over as CEO of the United Way of the Cape Fear area. Craig brings with him a wealth of experience working in United Way organizations around the country, as well as a new way of engaging with our community. Please join me in welcoming Craig to Wilmington and to the stage.
Chris is talking about partnerships. You only need partnerships if you're going to do big, bold things. And if you're going to do big, bold things, you need to think big thoughts. For some people, that's scary. Change is scary. We're going to talk about United Way, but we're going to talk about it not only as an institution, but as a process of working together in the community in a united way. Our community today is the product of previous generations and the choices and decisions that they've made. We've inherited that. They did a pretty good job. And we have pretty terrific leadership here today. We're the adults now that are going to make the choices and decisions that will determine the future for children and future generations, of course. I've had a chance to see our community in the context of other communities. This is the 9th United Way that I've worked with. I've worked with leadership in Philadelphia and Columbus and Pittsburgh and Syracuse. Tremendous leadership that came together to do big things. Silicon Valley, they didn't have community. I couldn't find the community. It was a place where it was growing so fast, people came to work there, they lived there, but the leadership didn't create community like I was used to in some of these other areas. And what I've found here, every community is dealing with the same equation. All of us have homelessness. All of us have substance abuse. All of us have violence. Issues that we're trying to deal with in the smartest possible way. It's not easy. But some communities are better than others, and I think it's how they organize their resources and how they aim and fire those resources in the community that can make the greatest difference. What's the role of a United Way in that? What's the role of charity? A lot of people think, well, you find the agencies that are doing the work that you know best for people that you care about the most, and you give to those organizations. Or is it organizing a community investment portfolio to look at the needs of the whole community and then organize those resources in a way where you don't have as many problems in the future? You're going to grow a community through the choices and decisions you make, through the leadership of that community. We're facing that puzzle as we have in every generation, and again, we've done a pretty good job, but we can do better. I've had a chance to see United Way and the evolution of United Way starting in the 1970s in Syracuse, New York. At that time, the United Way was a centralized funder of many wonderful community organizations. The community came together once a year for one campaign on behalf of so many wonderful organizations that were doing so much good work. And it was an efficient way of raising money in the workplace with a payroll deduction option, and people with greater wealth were able to give major gifts. The community came together beautifully. And we realized that's not enough. As good as that is, evaluating agencies, accountability for the dollars, a community coming together in a united way, it wasn't enough. We can be a community problem solver. But that's going to require individual agencies coming together and working together in a consortium of activities that could solve community problems. And it wasn't just not-for-profit agencies. It was the business community. It was government and so forth, working together. And then in the 1990s, we said we're more than that. We're a community builder. And I had the chance to present an idea called Day of Caring in 1991 to our trade association, the United Way of America, in a project we had 2 months earlier in Pittsburgh, where we had more than 100 projects with CEOs working side by side with their employees. We had the Army Corps of Engineers working with the utility trucks to transform parks, and we took pictures before and after. A year later, we had more than 100 communities doing this day of caring, building communities, working side by sides, and we see that in our community in the Chamber of Commerce. It's a wonderful idea. It builds community. But we didn't lose these other aspects of the United Way by moving forward and unifying the community in a new United Way. This is what you see in every community to some extent or another. It's a fragmented fundraising approach. And you've annual dinners, galas, telethons. Has anyone received anything in the mail asking for money in the last couple of weeks? It's important. Respond to it. These organizations are doing great work. But what we're talking about is trying to bring it together in a way where it's more coordinated, lower cost. Lower cost in United Way, it's a method of raising money that every community has because no one has yet come up with a better way to meet the needs of a community. Every community is like this. But the efficiency of a golf outing, for example, if you raise $100,000, but it might cost $40,000 to put it together. It's not efficient. But it's a great thing for that agency, and it has to be done because it lifts up that position of the organization to other people and brings in more volunteers. And by the way, they get $60,000. I've been to a number of galas here. They're critical. Even if we were raising a lot of money, we would still do this. Now, the last place I was in was Philadelphia. We raised $54 million, and that's not a fair comparison. But when I worked in the United Way in Syracuse, New York, it's a pretty good comparison to our four-county area. Here we have 466,000 residents. In Syracuse, there were 478,000. We have 12,000 fewer, but it's a good comparison. In Syracuse, when I left, we were raising $10 million. Here, it's $2 million. This is in the four-county area. What would it look like if we were raising $10 million in the community? Well, here's an example of what it looked like in Syracuse. We had 28 organizations that were receiving an allocation of $50,000 or more. Here's just 7 of the organizations. $900,000, $600,000. The Boys and Girls Club, $250,000. Here in our area, we have 2 agencies that receive an allocation of $50,000 or more. Yesterday, I was at the YWCA with the leadership from GE Hitachi. $170,000 in Syracuse. Here it's $13,000. Anyone that ever goes through that agency and meets the children and meets the staff and the volunteers, you couldn't walk out of that organization and say, this isn't worthy of my financial support. It's wonderful. Now, here is the fragmented human service system, not just in our community, but in every community. It's not coordinated. It's not coherent. It's a lot of wonderful things being organized, but not together as they should be. No architect ever looked at our human service system and said, you know, we could organize it in a different way. We could look and find the redundancies and duplications. We could find where there's gaps in services. And we do that to a certain extent in this community, but I've seen a much greater capacity for that in other communities, and it's smart. Because it's a way of managing a community that makes the most sense. And what you find is that you get more money to the agencies that are doing the best job. Do we have the potential to raise $10 million in this area like Syracuse? Well, again, we have 466,000 residents in our four-county area. There are 193,000 workers, people employed. Our United Way is currently contacting 31,000 people, in which 5,300 are contributing. The onus is on us. And we're not going to do it by getting better at asking people for money. We're going to be able to do this by getting better at presenting a case about our community, about the wonderful partners that are already here doing the job, and how it affects people's lives at a human level. And when we do that and we do it well, people say, you got me. This makes sense. I'm willing to support it. In Philadelphia, I had 539 people who contributed $10,000. That's not a good comparison, but in Syracuse, there were 4 when I started and 44 when I left. We didn't win them over by asking them for money. We won them over by connecting them in the community in smarter ways, and it made sense to them. And here, when I came to the United Way, where there were 3 $10,000 givers, over the last two weeks, we picked up 2 more. We can do this. But it isn't just raising money. It's a smarter, new approach to community organizing where these are symptoms that are effects of a cause that happened many, many years before. We're going to start organizing our community resources to be able to get there before the accident happens, and that means starting with kids. We're going to organize our community portfolio around strong kids, strong families and individuals, and strong neighborhoods. And they relate together. If you want to do one thing to prevent these things from happening, start with children. And let's meet their requirements. How do you do that? It's not complicated, but it's not easy. We know what to do. Physically, mentally, spiritually, we know what to do. Physically, what are the requirements of children? Nutrients, vitamins and minerals, not what some kids are getting. And I mean prenatal, starting as the body's forming. I'm talking about once the baby's born, the equipment they're going to use to think, the brain is forming now. You can't miss this opportunity. If you do, you blow it. And then the next thing is getting them ready for school. Get them school ready. Now, what are the mental requirements? Numbers, letters, words, a safe lap to sit on. The ability to be able to read to them and have them read to you. Get on the floor and work puzzles. This creates pathways in the brain. And there's the spiritual component. Children live in we all live in little worlds, but children especially, you need to widen that world. How many kids don't see the ocean until they're 8 or 9 years old on a school trip? It's 20 minutes away, for heaven's sakes. Get them out into nature. Nature teaches. Let them see a night sky for the first time and try to explain what the stars are, those little lights. It's the ability to connect them to something larger than themselves and expand this world. Inspire them with the museums that we have, not later on, but early, before they go into school. It isn't complicated because we know what to do, but it isn't easy because, like any parent, you have to commit to 20 years, at least. And when we do that, when we meet the requirements of these children, most of the kids in this area are making it. They're growing up and they come back as leaders in this community assets, or they're a gift from Cape Fear to other communities because we know how to do that. But there's so many kids that we're missing. And when we meet those requirements, they make it. When we don't, they see Ben David and his brother John, and we read about it in the newspaper. And by then, it's not a missed opportunity anymore. It's a lost life. And the cost isn't money that I'm talking. I'm not talking about the $30,000 it costs us every year. I'm talking about the neighborhoods. I'm talking about the families. And I'm talking about that individual that could have been so great. We're smarter than this. So what is the New United Way? It isn't an institution. There it is as an institution. It's a way of partnering in a community. The big player here is county government. We've got a smart one. The big player here is the business community. Media is fabulous here. If you've ever heard the vision coming out of the medical center here, it isn't just about the hospital system. It's about a force for wellness in the community. It's really enlightened, it's inspired, and it's smart. Not-for-profits, and what I'm missing here are churches and some of the service clubs that we have. We've got it all in this area, and one day there's going to be a community that's going to step up and say, we're going to do this. We're going to bring it to scale. Many kids are succeeding, but they're not all of the ones that should be. And to me, it's just a community making the decision to be able to do this, to move resources, still remediate problems, still try to fix broken things, but begin walking up the path so you can get there early on so the problems don't even occur. And we're human beings. Kids become teenagers, and what a problem that is. But they can make it. And we could do this. We could do this. I nominate Cape Fear.